Hi, everyone, online, and hi, everyone here. My name is Estefania Ciliotta. I'm the Associate Director here at the Center for Design. I'm also a design researcher, and we've been collaborating in this project for over a year now. So we are happy to share some of the things that we work on together with the Participatory Budgeting Office from the City of Boston. And I'll stop there so you guys can introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'm Michael Arnold. I'm an assistant professor in the design program here in the Department of Art and Design. Yeah, I'm very excited about this project. To Maria Fernanda.
Hey everyone, I am Maria Fernanda. I'm a second year PhD student here at MD. And I'm working on community work for natural Boston.
And that closes out the Northeastern component. And
Hi, everybody. My name is Renato. I'm the director of the Office of Participatory Budgeting and Connectivity.
And before we get into the actual work that we did, we would like to invite you to write down on the post-its that you have ideas that you individually may have for how to improve your communities, your town, the city or the town that you're part of. One idea per post-it, and then we invite you to just put them right up here. So whatever comes to mind that you've noticed that you think is missing, just put a post-it with your idea, or then
hold it up.
hold it up and bring it down here. Those of you online too, if you want to share some idea that you think your communities or city might need, put it on the chat and we'll take a look. Maybe just 1 minute for this.
Yeah.
Oh. Building trust with community partners.
With the computer.
Want me to put it up on the
Yeah,
screen?
yeah.
Sure, thank you.
Just have the chat run.
Can you see? Oh, yeah.
There we go.
Building trust with community partners and residents. Okay. Thank you.
Better transportation, accessibility. Oh, these are like allied here. Public transport, community gardens.
That's right.
Oh, you know, different cultures can exhibit their traditions, rituals, and stories every Sunday at Open Newberry. That's like very specific and cool. Affordable housing options for homeless in Alston and Brighton. Alston needs a community center. Two Alston related. All right. Other ones. Thank you. Oh, wow. There's a lot. Is that Facebook alternative?
Sorry, that's me.
Oh, Facebook
Yeah,
alternative.
it's not a physical thing, really.
Yeah. Like a Boston only social networking.
So, anything counts.
The city has more nicknames for it than any city I've ever lived in. Call it something. I don't know.
What is it?
Facebook alternative from Boston. Creating exhibitions and events that bring multiple orgs together. There's one of them. There with the other one.
Is that?
Mutual aid and donation.
Wow, thank you.
Lot of ideas.
Little tag team here.
Okay.
Support for community engagement.
Well, thank you. So, things that are open till later, okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm gonna write another one.
Serious?
Another public transit, connectivity.
This is kind of connected, the use of natural elements in buildings to improve health. Sure.
The T open later.
Community center.
Third places also there.
Yeah.
Ooh, walkable neighborhood.
No or number of blue bikes? No. Oh, okay. No blue bike stations nearby.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah.
so
Like the fact that
Is that a,
current or you don't want any?
get them out of my neighborhood.
So you want blue
Yeah.
bike state, gotcha. Gotcha.
Plus one for blue lights, okay. More housing first programs.
More support for working parents.
True.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, traffic signal.
Spaces again. Like a little cluster that's forming up here. Community gathering spaces. Oh, two in a row.
We have a couple more online.
And more green space. Oh, I can talk to you later.
Or bike lanes.
More trees and green spaces, so +1.
Reduce your utility bills online.
A few more here. Finish.
Thank you.
Is that better public transportation?
More artists in Boston.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's not like,
yeah.
JP used to have like such an artist community, there doesn't anymore.
Yeah. That's like a systemic one, right? Like you need
Yeah.
affordable housing
Yeah.
and exhibition space and
Yeah.
kids.
No, so more public child programs. Go ahead, sorry.
A easier way to afford a house.
Oh.
Also for professors.
Yes,
Public transit, wow, okay.
More frequent and faster transportation. Good. Ooh.
That is big.
Better access to fresh and affordable food.
With food here, I think that's what I would regard and then.
Okay.
Bike lane.
Cheaper rent.
Third, infrastructure. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
you go.
Third, spaces for young people. Nice,
It's a great idea.
thank you.
Just like, I'm gonna take a picture of this later, but, I see some, there, I'm thinking there's like about 50 there just from this little community.
No, thank you for
And
the.
more
message,
online.
Yeah,
Oh,
utility bills, more bike lanes, yep, thank you. All right. So,
so if
Can
you
you go to the next
imagine,
slide?
yeah, if you imagine what we have in the city of Boston, population wise,
In terms of
people,
600,000, but
that's
yeah,
600,000. Yeah, so we're trying to do this with 600,000 people. Is the essence of this project.
can we go to the next slide?
Oh, I'm the slide person. Thank you. Yes, I was like looking at where for
Is that going?
you didn't go.
Is that?
and the two. Oh,
I'll get us started. So, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here. I've been in the role of the director of the office since 2023. So since the origins of the office, I'll share a little bit of context on how it came about. But participatory budgeting as a process and as a concept originated in Brazil in the 80s. And it came about as an anti-poverty measure, because the idea behind participatory budgeting is for residents of city or a town or an institution to decide how to use a portion of public funding. So municipalities or an institution may set aside funding and they ask residents, what would you do with it? What do you want to do with it that will benefit the community? In Boston, our office is not the first try for participatory budgeting. Since 2014, there's been an effort focused on youth. So it's called Youth Lead the Change. And they have $1 million of capital funding where youth can propose ideas such as this, and then go through a process where 1 or 2 ideas get funded at the end of their process. And capital funding means basically funding that can be used for infrastructure, anything physical, right? So it can be benches or expanding Wi-Fi, basketball courts, things like that. This youth leader change process inspired many organizations and city leaders in the city to think about and explore what this will look like in a citywide scale, right? Not only for you, but for any resident of the city to participate. And a few community organizations started working to try to institute this in the city. And the way it ended up happening is they collected enough signatures around the city to put a question on the ballot. So in the elections of 2021, there were enough signatures to put a question, I believe was question number 1, where they asked residents of the city. It was a 2-part question. The first one was kind of like expanding the powers of city council to have more decision-making power in the city's budget. Before 2021, a lot of the decisions on the budget for the entire city came from the mayor's office, and city council could only accept or reject, right? But they didn't really have power to move money around or suggest different investments. So that was one part of the question, basically allowing the council to have more power on the budget. And the second part of that question was the creation of an office of participatory budgeting. And about 67% of Boston residents said yes to that question, which led to the creation of the office. So this was November of 2021. The process was to create an ordinance to establish the office officially. And the ordinance is maybe 3-4 pages and basically establishes roles. We do have a board of residents that oversees the process, which the city has many boards, but it's the first external oversight board is called. So they oversee the process. It's 9 Boston residents. And another key thing from the ordinance is there's language of advancing social and racial justice, which is also fairly unique. We have our neighbors, Cambridge and Somerville. They've been running TV processes before us, and they've done a great job. But the language of social and racial justice is not included. So is one of the lenses that we'll look at how we put together this process. Let me see what else. It's a small office, it's 3 people. It started with me as a director in 2023, and then we were able to hire someone to help us with the finance aspect of things, like the office operations, and also a chief of staff. So it's a 3-team office, and we were charged to create a process where any resident of the city can participate, providing ideas, and also voting on those ideas to see which ones get funded. In short, our process looks similar to this. So in the month of July, I will say that we just closed the first pilot process a few weeks ago. So we just finished the first cycle, and we are now preparing for the second cycle. So the way our process works, and each city has a different approach on how they do, because it depends a lot on the local context. But overall, the concept is this: residents propose ideas, which for us happens in the month of July. We as an office take those ideas, check for eligibility, because we have certain guidelines, right? It's things that the city can actually implement. So it needs to be feasible to do. And something unique about our process too is we use funding from the operating side, which allows us to do projects that are programs and services, and also infrastructure, which gives us more flexibility. So we ask residents, tell us, what would you use? How would you use $2 million? This is the amount of money we started with to benefit your community. And we collected in the first cycle about 1,400 ideas citywide. And then we take all those ideas, we check for eligibility, we organize them. We don't modify any of the ideas or delete any ideas. So we organize them and we bring them back to people for what is called proposal development. So then we work with residents to review the ideas, identify priorities, and with residents, draft what a proposal can look like for the ballot. And this takes, maybe from October to December. And voting, right now we have finalists, we have final ideas. We ended up with 14 ideas on the ballot. And residents had a chance to vote for up to 5 of their favorite ideas from mid-January through mid-February, so 1 month per vote. And we made voting accessible online, but also at City Hall. And we were also at some public libraries across the city to guide residents through the process. That's a little bit of an overview of participatory budgeting. The key role that the team at Northeastern played, when we started, it was just me and so many moving pieces. And I was, I'm like, I need help thinking how to make this process accessible. And we have thought about an idea of contracting with community groups. So, because one person cannot go around the city asking for ideas. So how do we expand that work? So in that concept of partnering with community groups, we were able to come up with a toolkit that they would then adapt to their own communities and needs and help us collect ideas from residents. The layer of social and racial justice, anyone could submit an idea online, but we partnered with 9 groups that focus on specific demographics and areas of the city to make sure that we hear from those residents who are usually not as involved in processes like this. I want to make the point that this is a pilot year. So like whatever we did is testing and trying, and also, the scale of it, I think we did a lot, but it's like reduced for this first year to try things out. So the team at Northeastern helped us think about, what are some of the materials, what is the agenda, how do we make this fun and interactive, but also useful and adaptable, so community groups can then use this, meet with residents and collect ideas for the process. This first year, we ended up extending the deadline for idea submission by 2 weeks, just because such a new process and people were still just finding out about it. But we feel like 1,400 ideas was a decent number to begin with, and we hope to have more every year. I'll almost wrap up with this intro. The purpose of the office is to become a bridge between residents and city departments, so there is a better connection in terms of budget priorities for the city. And so in that sense, our process serves 2 purposes. One is decide what to do with the funding of the office, right? We have $2 million through this process. We identify ideas, projects get funded. But the secondary purpose, and also very important process, it is like a citywide survey of resident priorities. So whatever we collect, we have a process in which we inform the city and departments and the mayor's office and saying, hey, these are the top priorities. You can use this to help think about future investments that the city can make to address some of these needs. I'll stop at this, and then I can also help answer any questions along the way.
I don't know, like while you were speaking, there's like so many more pieces of this, like I'm tempted to pull out. I think one of the things that we talked about early on that was really important to this work was to avoid deficit framing. Like a lot of the times, when you have an opportunity like this to speak back to the city, like the first thing is like to think about like all the questions of like, what is wrong? What is wrong with my neighborhood? But, and I was, this language has kind of become so embedded for us where we think about like, we're not going to talk about the problems of your neighborhood, but like what priorities do you have as a community that you want to bring forth, that you want to bring forth to the city. And so as, just as you were speaking, I just wanted to call that out. It's like an opportunity for a design move right there, just to move from how are you going to frame this question that you put before this group of people?
Yeah, that was very intentional. It was thinking about it because it can become a very negative process, like just everything that is wrong, and it become, we thought at that point like the Twitter of the city, right? All the complaints. So we wanted to like turn it into something positive and exciting. Like, what would you like to do? How would you improve things around the city? So that was very present in the language we used throughout the materials and communications.
And I think another part of the why, and I think someone put it in the chat too, is like this reestablishing or rebuilding the trust with the community and the members of the community too. So it was embedded within the framework that we use to develop the toolkit.
Oh. Is this Maria Fernanda's slide?
Anyway, so as Renato was mentioning, participatory budgeting is a model of governance that is within the city of Boston. And this project works as a feedback loop in which citizens and community organizations start to fit in with their ideas about what to be improved. This then fits the Office of Participatory Budgeting. They develop the idea, and then this also informs the government and keeps the loop ongoing and serves like a temperature measurement for the city itself. So when we think about how public budgets are generally formulated, they are usually formulated by policymakers, and this is behind doors. And some people with some privilege have access to these conversations. So the idea of participatory budgeting is opening this kind of like process so that people can actually intervene and give their ideas. And when this process is done well, there's the element of it being an inclusive process, which is part of what Renato and the conversations and what we were working on was the framework. And this is regardless of who initiates the process. So even if it's from the government or from another entity, that's the main concept.
If I can add something.
Yeah.
So for idea collection, in the purpose of inclusivity, we try many channels. So people can submit an idea online. We created a whole portal, which will be highlighted soon. There was a phone line that people can leave a voice note with their idea. There was a public libraries. People can go and submit an idea, and this model of community partnerships with nonprofit groups. And one thing I'll just say about that is, we didn't ask them if they can help us with it. We contracted with them. And this was very important on many fronts because it's a way of saying we value your work and the trust you have with residents. And it also formalized the commitment, right? So people really put a lot of effort into making workshops that were accessible for residents to share their ideas. I'll add that because I think it's important for some of this.
Yeah, it's really about like starting a conversation in this across the entire city about, you know, how do we want to improve our, you know, and what do we value as a community? Sorry, all right.
Yeah, another way in which we wanted to approach this project was seeing participatory budgeting as an opportunity to reinforce social bonds. And we decided to create this toolkit as a symbol of the city commitment to participatory budgeting itself. So if we go to the toolkit that we designed, this was an iterative process with the Office of Participatory Budgeting. This is just an overview of what we designed. So we had a facilitator's agenda, participants' agenda, briefing document, a slide presentation, card game that we called the Creative Bridge that was within the workshop and the worksheet, some guidelines for participation, and a checklist where they had. So the main idea of the agenda was to help the facilitators guide the conversation within these workshops. Whoops.
Oh, sorry, I hit too many times.
The briefing document was meant to inform citizens about what this process is about, just like as an overview. The cards game was meant to be used as the idea generation process and can like spark ideas within them in a way that isn't just like mandatory or something, but rather that would come from a conversation. And it also had education purpose, kind of, so that people would understand what are the constraints within they have to submit their ideas. The guidance for participation were just about making everyone's voices heard and kind of like navigating certain dynamics within these conversations, and checklist just to support that everything was going on. Okay.
Can I add something? So, one important thing to note here is also the fact that because we were working with community organizations as partners, we the four of us were not the ones facilitating those idea collection workshops. So we needed to design some sort of flexible toolkit that then, like Renato mentioned, could have been adapted for the needs of that specific community. And so that's why we also created the guidelines for participation and the agenda, so that the facilitator in that particular moment in time would use them accordingly and would facilitate the facilitation or the idea collection workshops. Yeah.
It almost becomes like a flexible script for a play, where you can hand over the script and you're gonna get maybe some groups will do a really great performance and some groups, that have great actors, and then some will have, actors that are more creative and they take their own approach to performing your play. So I think it ended up, we'll talk about that in just a bit.
These are just some pictures of the workshops that happened in summer last year, with the material that we designed being used. This is how some of the documents look like. I don't know if you want to talk about the deliberative workshop and conversation design.
Yeah, I would mention and this is stuff Maria Fernanda worked on quite a bit. The document on the left is the agenda that we would give to a participant. So they would just have kind of a overview of that. The document on the right is a little more detailed agenda that would be given to the facilitators, so they would know, the different structures of the meeting and how to run it. If you look on the very right, there's also a column that talks about what are the goals of each section of that meeting. So even if if the facilitator wants to freelance a little bit and maybe not use our language or use language that's more appropriate to their community, they can at least understand what are we trying to accomplish through the process of this meeting, and they're free to.
And there are groups who use their own materials, right? I mean, we didn't require to use ours. Here is some resources, but we needed to provide that context. But other groups, especially those who are very active in collecting signatures to passing TV, they know it very well, right? So that they know what they want out of the process. So we offer that flexibility because of that reason.
So this is the briefing document, and this was just a document that would help residents understand what participatory budgeting is, and will give them some of the foundations of what it is, what to expect in the process, and just to get them familiar with it. This is the cards game that we designed. So it would have a worksheet with it. And if you go to the next one. So the way in which each of the cards worked, so we would have 3 types of cards. The ones that would have the categories would also have the information about what these categories entail, so that they can have an idea. We also had a type card that was meant to show them if they are going to suggest ideas that are a program or a service, and if it's part of the budget that it's available. And the space it's going to be citywide or at the street level.
Just to jump in, one of the things that when people come into these workshops, they come in from their job, or maybe they've been going to school, maybe they've been at home taking care of kids, but they have a whole nother life that they're, like we spent a year thinking about participatory budgeting. Maybe those people spent 15 minutes thinking about participatory budgeting before they came to the meeting. So part of this card game, and this is something that Maria Fernanda created as part of her work on this project, was to guide people to the kinds of things that are the capacities that the city has to respond to a citizen's interest. So you come in here with this kind of half-formed idea. What are some of the things we're actually prepared to do as a city in response to your ideas? What are some of the ways that you could frame this idea as a project, as a program, as a service? Are you thinking about this from the perspective of your neighborhood or your street, or is this more of a citywide project? So, making those dimensions of framing your project into a game helps people bracket their idea in a way that makes it easier to feed into the city systems and have the city be responsive to those ideas.
I'll add that, especially in Boston, people are very vocal about what they want to see. So we wanted to hear their ideas, but we also wanted for people to expand their silo. So by participating in this, if you had a category that I'm not too familiar with, but I have a category and then it's a service and then it's in this type of location, we will encourage people to think beyond a single issue push, right? So tell us your idea, but also explore what else you would want to share with us.
Yeah, this would also kind of drive conversations because it was held in groups. So each of them would discuss about what they were thinking about and then write the ideas. So it was a conversation prompt as well. Yep. So the salient materials, elements of participatory budgeting, it's the website that Renato mentioned earlier. We're going to show how the website works, of all the ideas that are up there right now. There's a toolkit that you can also download from the participatory budgeting website, so that other people can host their own workshops. And there was also an evaluation survey to kind of like close the loop and understand what worked within this first stage and then what would be revamped for the next iteration. Video of the website.
So ultimately, the idea collection workshops served as an inspiration or like activator to submit ideas on this website. Because the idea was to like spark this ideation process or bring out the priorities of the community members and then guide them to post the ideas here, because then it will be a way for the city to collect all the ideas and then systematically evaluate priorities later down the road.
What it actually happened is people ended up, so in some events, it was held, let's say, fully in Spanish. The nonprofits were facilitating the process and explaining people how to use the website to submit their idea was a little challenging and time consuming. And by then it had been a 2.5 hour meeting. People are hungry or people like starting to like get tired. So what we ended up adopting is one of the toolkit materials, they could write their idea initially there. So we used that and we told nonprofits, use that as a way to collect the ideas, and the nonprofits themselves uploaded those ideas to the site later on. So that's kind of like, sometimes we think like conceptually this is great. In reality, we have to pivot because constraints of time and just it can be a complex process for people to like, at the end, after being, in a 2-hour meeting plus then having to do this, we didn't want to lose any of the ideas basically.
Well, and too, working with community groups, people have a really varied idea of what it means to talk back to the city. So if they show up to a meeting and they say something out loud, some people think like, oh, at that point, my idea is the city's heard what I have to say. I was at the meeting, I said what I wanted to say, and they were there. So I think, being very clear about this data collection process is one of the challenges to overcome with any time you're designing a process like this. We had a question online, and we'll cover that in just a couple slides here. It's me. So we close the process with evaluation and then thinking about our future work. just some data about the process. There were 19 workshops that were sponsored by the city, and through those 312 ideas were directly collected during the workshops. Over 560 residents participated throughout the month of July in 2024. In the entire process, we had 789 residents participate. So there's about, 230 or so more participated only online. And the total ideas submitted was over 1,200. So it's really quite exciting, especially for this just being the pilot year. And, thinking about like, we're really doing a lot of feasibility testing of these systems. And can we connect all these things together? So we found out there's a lot of interest out there in being a part of the process. Workshops were held all over the place. These are some of the in-person ones, photos from some of the in-person ones. And just thinking about, evaluating the design work that we did, it seems like, well, it's a website, it's an agenda, it's a card game, but really like a lot of these processes are about social steering of people to feed them into a space where they can give helpful feedback and helpful outcomes to the city. People really enjoy being part of these workshops. They enjoyed especially discussing their interests in the community issues. And I think a lot of that had to do with the positive framing of the events. Maria Fernanda mentioned our goals early on, and the ones that stood out as being met really quite effective, that we were able to use participatory budgeting as a platform for dialogue about the needs, values, and priorities of the community. That our goals to increase trust and increase opportunities. We saw that show up not only with the citizens directly, but also with the community partners, where they felt really well supported with the toolkit and with the level of support that we were able to give as a design team and through the OPB to these organizations. So I think that that's a real key key finding. Also, the opportunity for participatory budgeting to reinforce social bonds. These things are kind of funny, right? You bring a bunch of people together, you put them in a room. Some of them will inevitably go out for beer together right after the meeting. And so we were able to see, and I mean, I'm just being kind of joking here, but like that opportunity, we got reports back from some of our community partners that there was social bonding in these people put on their feedback forms that they enjoyed it and met new people in the meetings as well. So I think that's kind of a key win to bring back.
I'll add something, Michael. I think one of the challenges that we were facing is there is a lot of maybe apathy or mistrust or disbelief in processes, especially in some neighborhoods that have been historically, disinvested over time. And we were trying to go to them and talk to people. And I think the way we found most effective to connect with those residents is through organizations that work in that area. So in that sense, we use this idea of going to where people are through trusted agents, the nonprofits. And this is a long-term game, right? Because at the beginning, some people were, okay, I enjoyed the workshop, but like, I doubt these things will happen, right? People had some sort of doubts. And then we went back to people again during the proposal development phase, and they were like, oh, okay, so we're actually coming up with something. And then there's voting and the projects were announced, and and they were like, actually, some of the ideas that I saw were a reality or will become a reality. So I think it's a long-term game of like building that trust. But overall, I thought it was very effective in getting us started.
just skip past some of the data there. We worked with an external partner to Data and Soul to do an evaluative assessment of the work. But I think, you know, from a design perspective, and I'm seeing like a lot of design faces in the room, you know, we're really thinking about designing this iteratively in an action research model with Office of Participatory Budgeting as, you know, as the center of this and their external oversight board. We found this to be a very positive experience. I think some of this stuff has been said before, so maybe we just skip to what's I think maybe just to mention the pros and cons of the partnership model briefly. There's a range of like I was saying earlier, there's a range of fidelity which with these community partners will enact the meeting design. So I think that's one of the things to think about as we go forward. If we want to, you know, either be more proscriptive or create things that are more flexible. So I think that would be an interesting design choice going forward. And I'll just pass it to Renato to close up a little bit about the current state of things because it's very exciting. The election has happened. There's projects on the table to be completed.
Yeah, awesome. So so voting ended February 15, and we had almost 4,500 people vote in the city. So we went from about 1,300 ideas collected in the summer to kind of like tripling that in terms of people voting for the projects they wanted to see. So we hope to see that trend continue to go up in terms of engagement. Do you have the slide of the project? So the 6 projects, so we have $2 million. Each project on the ballot had an amount that, you know, people could decide. So for instance, and we had up to 2 million. So expand access to fresh foods in Boston. We saw issues about food accessibility in the ideas that were here. So that received $400,000 that we have here because we have this option of doing programs and services, but also infrastructure. Some of these projects is not the city actually doing the work, but these will become grants for nonprofits to do the work back in the community, right? So it's like we start from the ground, collecting ideas. We do this filtering and selection, and then some of these projects then will go back to residents through nonprofits applying for funding. The next one is rat prevention initiatives in dense residential areas. So it's also a priority for residents, the issue of rats in the city. Programs to support incarcerated and formerly incarcerated youth that received $250,000, which will also become grants for groups supporting this population. The rat one received $500,000. The next one is rental assistance for Boston youth ages 16 to 24. We saw some ideas about housing affordability. This one received $200,000. And the number 5 was community gardens, which is also something that came up here, on underutilized land to address food insecurity in areas that are like food deserts in the city. And the last one, this one was originally funded for $450,000, but we met our cap, so we only had $150,000 for the benches. So this is install benches in high ridership public transit bus stops in Boston. So initially 150 benches were proposed. We have to scale it down to about 50 benches. So this is the outcomes, and as you can see, the community groups that were very vocal about equity in the process, we heard that they were like very happy with the options people had, because all of this, the idea is to impact people that need it most in the city. Right now, we are working with city departments to do the implementation plans for all of this. We want to get something out as soon as possible. So hopefully by the end of this year, some of these projects are starting to be implemented. And now we're also preparing for cycle 2, right? tomorrow we actually have a public meeting where we'll talk about findings of this first year and how we as an office are thinking about adjusting our plan to improve from the previous cycle. Something that came about from the community partnerships, after they did the workshops, we talked to each of them for about an hour to debrief their experience. How was it for them? Anything that we could have done better? And one of the things that came up is, we like, first of all, that they were compensated. They like the flexibility of the materials, but they said, we can put together a workshop, but that's not necessarily our area of expertise or where we can get to more people. So they said, it'll be great to have more flexibility in the types of activities that we do to engage with residents, and that's something we're incorporating. So we're saying, we were a little more prescriptive on do a workshop, and these are the materials. Now we're gonna do an open application and say, what would you propose to do with this amount of funding to connect with residents? And we'll review the proposals and, based on what's being proposed, then we give the funding. We started with 9, and those 9 were selected based on availability and previous connections and also demographics and geography. For this new round, we want to make the process more accessible, so any organization in the city can apply to host a meeting or propose. So for the next 2 months, now we're gonna refine our process, kind of like adjust the plan, and then in July we'll kick off cycle 2 with idea collection, and we expect voting to happen again in January 2026. There's been calls to have more funding for participatory budgeting. Many of the community advocacy groups are asking for 1% of the city's budget, which is about $40 million. I would have had a heart attack if we have the first year with $40 million, just because it's massive. So starting a little smaller, feels more manageable. I don't know if the city will go to the $40 million, but there's a lot of organizing happening to try to get that funding up. Secured, we have another $2 million for the next cycle, but the city's starting their budget process, and it may be that city council, with their new powers, put more money towards the PD process. So we don't know yet.
Well, and like one of the things when you do like scientific research or design research, a lot of the times a good conservative research plan is to plan your first year to test feasibility. And you just design this thing, get it out in the community, collect the data you want to collect. Much about making the materials to support the workshops as it is about facilitating connections between organizations, people, and community members.
And I will add political, right? Because
Political, yeah.
we as an office had to navigate the desires of the groups that were essential in bringing PD to the city, like how they envision the process. And we had to balance kind of like what the city is open to do in the first year. Right, so we had to bring those two perspectives and come up with something that people felt okay to try it. So that was like a balancing act in constant back and forth. And that will start again in the next few weeks. So not looking forward to that, but looking forward to that, because all that feedback we met almost every week with our board in public meetings for 3 months to come up with a first process, and the collaboration with the board, advocates in the room during public comment. I think it made the process a lot better, than if we were just designing it in the back in our office in closed doors. It made it more difficult and challenging, but I think we came up with something.
And if you're interested in this kind of design, I have a book coming out in the US in June, that, these are some of the first off the press copies. I have up in my office, but I'm not giving them to anybody because I only have a couple. But yeah, in just about a month, we'll have a new book published in the US, called Conversational Design, improving participation and decision-making in public organizations. Check it out wherever fine books are sold.
Well, I think we should probably wrap up, but thanks everyone.